Hi, welcome everybody. We are live at the National Border Patrol Council here in Edinburgh, Texas, getting ready for a roundtable with Jim Jordan and others discussing the biggest issue going on right now in our country, and that is the immigration crisis on our southern border. Welcome everybody. Brian Glenn here, live for you. Thanks for joining us. This is an opportunity for everyone to get a clearer picture of what's going on at our southern border. You know, we were just here, it seems like last week, with Ted Cruz and others as they toured the facilities here and did a press conference. Well, now it's Jim Jordan and other congressional leaders, their opportunity. Today, what we can expect to hear is comments from them touring some facilities and along the border. Earlier today, we took a brief journey along the border and just got an idea of what the situation looks like. We saw some giant missing pieces in the wall. Hopefully that those can be continued to be constructed. But we're going to hear stories from landowners. We're going to hear stories from people that live up and down this southern border here and have seen the effects of immigration in their communities from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, from a safety standpoint. This is a national security issue at this point. We saw in the news a couple days ago two gentlemen from Yemen that were on a travel kind of a terrorist watch list. They made their way in here. So is that some of the questions we're going to hear today about national security? Is this becoming a national security threat to our country, and what can we do about it? And we know that President Biden had put Kamala Harris in charge of this immigration crisis. She is yet to make an appearance down here in this area. So we'll see if that changes here in the next day or so. And of course, we've all seen the heartbreak video of the young boy who traveled across the border and was wandering alone and was found by someone. And we've seen these heartbreak stories of these families traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles, very little food and water. They pay these coyotes to bring them up into this area. And this is a humanitarian issue, and this is something that cannot be just kicked aside. It must be addressed, and the time is now, because as we get further into the, today it's sunny skies, breezy, and highs in the upper 90s, and as the temperature and the conditions get worse to do this, you're going to see the effects of the traveling across these countries even more tremendous than what they are right now. So we are going to bring this roundtable discussion to you live. It is scheduled to last about an hour, and after that it will go outside for a brief press conference that will last about 20, maybe 25 minutes for that. We'll bring this to you live, but thanks for joining us right now. Of course, you can share this broadcast on whatever platform you're watching us right now. You can also go to our website, RSBnetwork.com. You can stream, watch from there. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Please go to and share this broadcast when it gets as many people as we can on it, because I think the time for the right information to come out is now. We've seen so many different narratives come out about the border. People downplaying that it's a crisis, and as we all know, this is very much a crisis. And we will hear from today people who live far well outside the southern border and how it affects their communities where they live. So this is something that must be addressed now. It affects every American. It affects our school system. There's schools along the border here that have been maxed the capacity to begin with. There's schools that our classrooms are done out of a portable building. So now you put in more kids in these classrooms. Granted, that's just more stress on the system, more stress on the teacher. Of course, a lot of times these kids don't speak English, so now you have a language barrier there as well. So it affects everyone, affects the businesses, the communities, the landowners, the ranchers that we'll hear from later today about the effects of illegal immigration. But we're glad you're joining us, and if you could please share this broadcast. Let me step aside and give you an idea. If you're just now joining us, welcome. We are live from the National Border Patrol Council headquarters here in Edinburgh, Texas. This is just north of McAllen and Mission, Texas, where we were just a few weeks ago. So we appreciate your involvement with this, and of course we appreciate your support. And now more than ever, we need your support to make this type of content happen. And we want to thank our proud partner on all of this, our friend over at Mike Lindell over at MyPillow. If you want to contribute to patriotism, if you want to make a difference and you don't have the time to go out and volunteer or do any type of community service in your area or even go out and attend some of these meetings, this is what you can do. Go to mypillow.com, mypillow.com, and simply put in the promo code RSBN at checkout, and you'll get a substantial discount up to 66% off. And of course, proceeds of those products goes right back here to help this network do what we do. And we've been traveling across the country post-election, bringing you all types of stories, and we will continue to do that. But one way that you can help us right now, and I'd appreciate it if you could do that today, because it does mean a lot to us that we continue to support Mike. We all know the cancel culture has hit him very hard, and we want to make sure that we are on top of it and we can help him as much as we can. So go to mypillow.com, mypillow.com, and put in the promo code RSBN at checkout and get up to 66% off of your entire order. And of course, those proceeds, portion of those proceeds goes back to help us. Some of the congressmen are coming out right now. We have got a look at Jim Jordan just off camera there, and they're making their way to their seats. And what we can hear from them, I would imagine, is what they've seen and what they've heard, the stories they've heard over the last couple of days. I know that when we were here last week, we heard stories of the coyotes. We heard stories of the drug smugglers coming in and really terrorizing some of the area down here. And it seems like it is a war. It's a war between the law enforcement agencies here and the coyotes and drug smugglers that are really conducting all of the business here of bringing these people across. And we've heard some estimates that they're making, what, $4 million a week, I think was one of them. Double check my notes on that. But that is incredible. So this is a money-making opportunity for these coyotes. And of course, along with that comes drugs and a lot of crime. So this affects everybody. And I think that the time to really, to turn our attention on it. And I know sometimes people get tired of these news cycle stories that it seems like every media outlet is pushing, but we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was a huge issue. We know it's a huge issue. We know that these communities are being destroyed. These border agents, these agencies are being stretched out from personnel because of the demand that it's on there. And we heard a story today with a border agent that you might have seen some of these videos where they're processing people under a bridge or in a tent by a bridge. And the simple fact is because there's so many people coming across, when they apprehend, 75 to 80 people at a time, they need space to process all of them. They need space to do that. And that's why they have to use the resources that's available to them. If it's a bridge, it's a bridge. But you got to think about this. Not only are you protecting the people coming across from any type of elements, but you're also protecting our border agents, our men and women that are out there doing this. They need to be sheltered from the elements. So if you see any pushback on why they're being processed under a bridge, that is really for everyone's safety as far as from the elements, because it is hot and days that it's rainy. They do what they have to do. They're overwhelmed here. So hopefully we hear some stories about how you can make a difference in your own community, and maybe solutions that are ahead. If you're just now joining us, Jim Jordan, Congressman from Ohio, is about to take the microphone, so we may cut away here in a few minutes and get you. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jim Jordan, the Roundtable at the National Border Patrol headquarters. Stand by.
Yeah, just grab your seat. Scott, grab your seat. Fausto. We'll get started. Welcome to everybody. First, I want to thank the National Border Patrol Council for hosting this for us, and in particular, Brandon Judd, the president of the So there's Brandon right there. I was looking around. He's right here. We're gonna let Brandon speak first here in just a minute, but I want to welcome all our guests. We don't need to look at this as a hearing, but this is more of a discussion. But we did want to start with all of you. We got a number of 6 members of Congress here from all over the country: Indiana, North Carolina, California, Wisconsin, Utah, Arizona, and Ohio, of course. So we want to hear from you. We've had an just really informative couple days, day and a half, I should say. But we've been looking forward to this, where we can hear from folks right down here in law enforcement and in agriculture, and of course property rights owners as well. So maybe we'll start with Brandon. Why don't you kick it? This is your place, so you get to go first and take a few minutes. Maybe we can 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever you want. We got a good hour. So fill us in on what you think the Congress needs to know, specifically members of the Judiciary Committee, which has primary jurisdiction over immigration law in the Congress. Let us know what you think we need to know, and based on what's happening, what we saw yesterday. But we'll go with you, and then maybe Susan, and then Sheriff, and then the Farm Bureau. So go right ahead, Brandon.
I appreciate you. I appreciate every one of you coming out to see on the ground exactly what's taking place. Sheriff Lauterbach has been dealing with this issue for an awful long time. Susan, she has been dealing with this for even longer than anybody that I know of. So there is a problem that we're facing today. This problem can be solved. This isn't rocket science. It's been solved in the past. It can be solved again. There just has to be the political will. But we also have to be willing to have that open and honest conversation. The American public deserves to have all of the answers, all of the facts, not just little sound bites based upon whatever news organization is reporting. If we have an open and honest conversation, the public always agrees that we need a secure border. We have to be able to determine who is coming into this country, whether they come in through legal means or illegal means. We have to be able to determine who's coming in. We have to follow the laws to be able to protect those that have a legitimate claim to asylum here in the United States. We are the most compassionate country in the world. We allow more immigrants into this country on an average basis than any other country in the world. We want to be that people. We want to be that country that looks out and protects people. But at the same time, we also want to be that country that is about laws. Otherwise, we are no better than the countries that people are fleeing from. The main reason that people look at Mexico, that is a country that is so rich in natural resources, it's not even funny. But they don't spread the wealth in that country. They do not allow people to prosper like we do here in the United States. And we're able to do that here because we are a country of laws. We believe in the rule of law. The moment we get rid of that, the moment we go to a system that we get to pick and choose, which is what's happening today on the border, the moment we go to a system where we get to pick and choose what laws we follow, we become no better than those countries that people are trying to escape from. When you look at historically speaking, you're going to hear, the sound bites of saying, well, surges come, surges go. This surge is unlike anything we've ever seen before. We are dealing with large numbers of single adults. We're dealing with large numbers of unaccompanied minors. We're dealing with large numbers of family units. This is something put all together that we've never seen before, especially on this scale. So when you hear that we're dealing with a surge that hasn't been seen in 15 years, I would argue that this surge is the biggest surge that we've ever seen in the history of the Border Patrol. Because when you go back to the late 1990s, early 2000s, even though we were making 1.5 million arrests, we were actually dealing with about 400 to 500,000 individual people. We were just arresting the same people over and over again. Today, even though that recidivism because of Title 42 is a little bit higher than what usually is, if we make 1.2 million arrests, we're actually dealing with about 800 to 900,000 different people. So again, this surge is unlike anything that we've ever seen before, and it can be controlled. If we look at that, if we look at the solutions and we go back on past administrations and we look at what they have implemented, we can follow that and use that as a guide. If we hold people in custody, pending their asylum hearing, they will stop coming. Only 7 to 12% that claim asylum in the United States, once their case is adjudicated, are found to actually have a legitimate claim.
Brandon,
and most
can I
people
just
know
interrupt? Hold them in custody in either here or in Mexico.
It doesn't
either
matter.
One. Okay.
It doesn't matter. As long as they are not released into the country, the catch and release magnet, that is what draws people to come here. You're going to hear the claim that, well, economic purposes, well, that's true, but there is no refugee status in the United States for economic purposes. You're going to hear natural disasters. Well, the only country in 2020 that had a natural disaster in the last half of the year was Honduras, yet we see Guatemalans and El Salvadorans. They can't claim natural disasters. Then you're going to hear the violence. Well, we can look at Chicago, Illinois, and recognize that there's just as much violence in Chicago as what there is in the country of Guatemala. So all of these different things, when they add up, it's leftist talking points that lead to an open border system, and we can't have that. Now, I will tell you, and please bear with me for a second, when I say leftist, I'm talking about the far left. There has to be consensus. There has to be able to reach across the aisle. The National Border Patrol Council is not a partisan organization. We look for those individuals that will support border security. Those individuals, we support them. And that doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. We want the border secured. And for that reason, we're very grateful to be able to host this meeting today, to have this honest, open discussion so that the American public really understands what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Judd. We really appreciate that. Let's stick with the law enforcement side here, and let's go to the sheriff next, Mr. A.J. Louderback, who is sheriff of Jackson County, great Jackson County, Texas. Sheriff, thank you for your work. Thank you for being here with us today. And time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman Jordan, and it's an honor to be here. I appreciate each of your time away from your district to come to Texas and take a realistic view and learn more about a system that many of us have been dealing with for a long time. Now, geographically, I'm situated on a major corridor into Houston. So the narcotics and human trafficking that's gone on there has happened my entire career. So what we see here, and this is a very strategic, a very operational plan that's been put in place here that we're faced with today. That's been carefully orchestrated. We're seeing in my region, in the 7-county AOR, Area of Responsibility for HSI, we're seeing a massive uptake currently daily of issues that come from border policies that are in place now. It's not new. We've had these same type of border policies before, but never at the level that we're experiencing today. So by far the worst that we've ever had. There's a very arrogant air about this entire situation. The attitude is very different that we're faced with today. People have been empowered. The cartels have been empowered here. And it's a telling effect. The surge in assistance for Texas sheriffs, Texas border sheriffs, New Mexico sheriffs, the California, Arizona sheriffs. Arizona obviously hit very hard along with Texas in this area. So we're seeing no surge and no assistance there. We had one of our very, very first stakeholder meetings by Zoom on Monday. With Director of ICE and CBP. So, we had a little over an hour in that conversation, but there's nothing that seems to be moving rapidly for any assistance for any border sheriff or any sheriff that's engaged in this. And this is not. We've often said this is not a Democrat. This is a Republican issue. It's a national security issue. Period. It's a border security issue. So we can take all that out and let's operate from the premise that we have to have a secure border in this country, period. And in the conversation there, and policies that don't interact with that, with the balance of bringing in people legally in this country, that needs to be honored. But the effect of what we're seeing today with this is profound. And we're not seeing any surge of any activity. The men and women of Border Patrol and ICE, Lord knows that they need help in this situation. You've got Texas sheriffs here that are now inundated with a crime problem that we have not had. So every aspect of our lives have changed. Our citizens are coming to me. I get texts and emails daily from people all over the nation about this. There is a level of concern and fear in this country today that we have not experienced here. This out-of-control chaos that's happened with these policies has caused this, and it's you know, at the very most, please look at surging resources down here where we can better try to handle the situation the best we can. It's county budgets are what they are, but these policies are put in place by the federal government, by the administration that's in power now. So, you know, hopefully we can get to the table like you're spending your time down here doing, and get some assistance here coming quickly in various forms that will truly help. You know, Texas sheriffs and Texas law enforcement and in the other states that are border states. The border states are hit the hardest, and they don't stop here. They don't stop at the border. They're coming into the interior, and that's where every law enforcement agency in the U.S. is going to be impacted at some point in time, very soon, if not already. So these are the things that I would like for the delegation here to look seriously at. And let's go to work and try to bring those things and get some level of order back here in our border situation, which will at least help us in the interior try to get hold of things and operate with some efficiency on what we're trying to do here.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. Let's go to Mr. Frazier with the Texas Farm Bureau. Appreciate you being here today. I know you represent a lot of folks in your organization, so go right ahead.
Thanks, sir. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming down and looking over the situation. Thank you for your service. Thanks certainly to the law enforcement and the Border Patrol folks for their service also. We appreciate what they do. A friend of mine over in Starr County once said, you know, there was talk about walls and fences and this, that, and it doesn't really matter what it is. We need borders. And we all need borders. We all live on borders. Not a one of us have a house that doesn't have a door on the front of it and the back of it. Every one of us have borders. And Fausto and I were talking earlier about, it's funny how our cattle or whatever in these pastures, we close the gate, we open up the gate, and you walk away, and it doesn't take but a day or two, somehow or another, all the cows went to the other pasture. It's funny how they didn't stay where they belonged. You know, we took the border away, they went where they wanted to go. We're no different. We need borders, we need help. All these counties along the border, even several counties inland from the border, I'd say even in some of your states or whatever that are outside the area here where some of these folks go to, you know, we're stretching our county budgets, our county law enforcement, you know, we're stretching those folks beyond what they're designed to do and supposed to do. I know, you know, there's a number of counties that you hear about find folks dead on the ranches or whatever and end up having to bury them and take care of them and all, you know, all that goes on with the burial or whatever. And when you do dozens of those, your counties aren't set up for that, and our law enforcement folks that are dealing with that aren't set up to do that really, but we have to do it. There's nobody else there, so we're stretching these folks really, really thin. This, no doubt in my mind, is an orchestrated plan to do this, and I think that's kind of why you see some folks in the administration currently, you know, don't believe there's a crisis. It's not a crisis. It's going according exactly where they want it to go. They're looking for voters, and there's some folks out there that have to have a cause, I guess you'd say, and we have to have people in need. Well, our economy was humming before COVID hit a few months ago. I mean, there was, you know, unemployment all over the nation was going down for the most part. Pretty much any kind of sector you look at, unemployment was being reduced. There were a lot of jobs going on. All of a sudden, some folks are going to run out of a cause to protect. We have to have some victims here. And so we're just bringing in a new group of victims is what we're trying to do. And that's what, I hate to say it, but I think that's what some folks are doing. I can't really add to what the folks that are here every day on the border see much beyond that. We have, you know, our fences and stuff are knocked down. These drive-throughs, these bailouts, and they don't just occur right along the border. I live about 100 miles inland, and we have, you know, bailouts in our neighborhood. we still have a few of those a year. And those, from what I understand from some of the sheriffs along the border counties, is they've gone from, maybe 1 or 2 bailouts a month to 6 or 8 a day. And when we're hearing that, a lot of what we're not hearing about was we're hearing very little apprehension of drugs. We're hearing a little bit of it, but I think we're, kind of got the bait and switch. Watch over here, and we're picking up all these people, and we're dealing with all these people that are crossing. And the folks that are crossing, I mean, heck, folks here will tell you that they're sitting there waiting for the bus to pick them up just like school children every morning. That bus is going to come by and get us. We're not running. We're not hiding. Why? There's no need to. We're going to be processed and let go. And from what I understand, that if they go through the process and they get a court date to show up to hear their asylum plea, that, 5, 6, 7, 8% or less than that actually are accepted. And yet I've heard numbers like, upwards of 80% don't even show up for their hearing. Why would you show up if there's only 5% chance you might get in? I wouldn't show up either. I'm in already. Why would I go back? I got where I wanted to be. There's some things we need to fix. I think we can have immigration, but some of these folks that are seeking asylum, I think we could work out a way to start that in their own countries before they get here. We have embassies and various relations with all these countries where these folks are coming from. Certainly we could work a way to do that there. It's supposed to even bring them to Mexico. That's a good start waiting in Mexico, but I don't think they have to go that far personally. But it's an ongoing crisis. Growing up as a kid, I recall, folks, you'd run into 2 or 3 guys here and there passing through. Most of the time they were from Mexico. They were working their way through. They might even work on your place for a few days and work their way on through, pretty harmless. But now, because of the trafficking mechanism here and the drug trade and all, these folks have become a lot more militant. You're kind of scared of them. You're kind of scared to be out on these ranches by yourself nowadays. And you're kind of definitely scared to have your family there. We used to not lock anything. Now we got to lock everything. I mean, every little thing you got, you put a lock on. It may or may not do any good. But it's no way to live. There's no reason to do it. And these folks, they don't stay in my neighborhood necessarily. Most of them keep going on north. I mean, you ask almost any of them, they're trying to get to Houston or Dallas, at least. And a lot of them go on up into the Midwest, Chicago, and some of those cities too. So, I mean, we're just adding to the problems that those folks have there too. And so I don't know what all the answers are, but I know it's getting stretched pretty thin. We're hurting the morale of our law enforcement officers. We're ruining the morale of our Border Patrol agents. I mean, to a point almost where it's like, well, I'm going to catch them here and deal with the paperwork and all to put them on the bus to send them wherever. Look the other way and they walk by and go where they want to, and I don't really have to deal with them. I mean, it's not going to be long till we're not going to, why bother? There's no borders and no borders. We're all used to having borders. We all used to, as a kid growing up, your homes, your schools, everything has borders. It has some lines we don't cross. And we've lost that line on our border here, and that's what you need your guys' help to get back. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe before we go to Ms. Kibbe and Mr. Salinas, the president of Border Patrol said this surge is unlike anything we've ever seen. I think that's a direct quote. The sheriff said it's chaos. I think that was a direct quote. Both indicated that it's the policies of the current administration that has caused this unprecedented surge and chaos. But then you said something that I think was maybe the first time we heard it. You said you think it's intentional.
Well, absolutely. I mean, absolutely it's intentional. There's folks that need somebody that's a victim. And if our economy's blowing and going and all of a sudden our victim pool's getting smaller and smaller, we got to have some more victims.
So the director of the Texas Farm Bureau thinks the Biden administration is intentionally causing this chaotic surge on our southwest border.
No, that's what Scott Frazier thinks.
Okay. But you are director.
I won't necessarily bring in Texas
I understand
Farm
that.
Bureau.
I understand that. But you are director of the Texas Farm Bureau, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, look, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that's I think the first time we've heard it said that. For those of us, members of Congress, I think that's the first time we heard it said that directly. And it sure seems that way, because what else could you expect when you put in place the policies that this new administration's put in place? Well,
and even during the time, the debates going on, this, that, and the other, before the elections, when asked questions about that, President Biden said he was going to relax a bunch of these rules. He didn't make it a secret about it. Exactly what he's going to do.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I wanted that on the record and clear. Ms. Kibbe, Property Rights Association here of South Texas. You're the executive director of that association, excuse me.
I am, yes.
All right, well, you're recognized, and then we'll come to Mr. Salinas.
Thank you. So, South Texans Property Rights Association was formed back in 2006 because of this very issue. Border security and immigration reform was our organizational and main focus initially. Now we're up to 10 different issues on things that affect landowners. And I know Fausto will probably talk about the border, so I'm going to talk landowners along the border, and they have their own challenges that Fausto will speak to. But I'm going to talk about the landowners in the checkpoint counties. So these are 70, 80, 90 miles away from the border. It's that last border, last checkpoint. And in those checkpoint counties, we have the migrants that are smuggled through, drive through in caravans, through cutting fences. If there's a law enforcement pursuit, then they will bail out in private property, taking down fences, ramming gates. And then we know now that these smugglers that are traversing through private property are carrying firearms. In fact, they are now putting out, and Brandon can probably support this, and I'm sure there's a lot more out there that we as citizens have not seen, but we were privy to an occurrence that happened in Jim Hogg County that's just a couple of county north and west of here, where two smugglers, and they're filming themselves and they're putting it on TikTok, and then law enforcement is monitoring that and pulling it off. But they had AR-15s with drum magazines that carry up to 100 rounds. And this is on rural roads in private property that these things are occurring. They have a setup just like the cartels do in Mexico, but this is on U.S. soil. And so I brought pictures from some of our landowner members on their own gang cameras, and I leave the packet for Andrea, that shows this is a property damage issue, both of these are fences. I guess I'm not speaking into the mic enough. But this is happening. This is all, there's maybe some the end of last year, but these are all this year, and they're dated and marked from the camera.
Yeah.
And this goes on and on. We now have law enforcement, local and federal law enforcement, that have told landowners that they should start carrying firearms. And so obviously there's intel coming in that there are more and more armed smugglers. We're also trying to pass a bill on the state level that deals with smugglers. It will make it a felony for them to evade or hide illegal immigrants carrying firearms or fleeing from
Okay.
law enforcement.
Yeah.
And that's going to help Border Patrol if we can get it passed. Right now, we can't get it up for a hearing, unfortunately. And so this just shows, and this is actually Border Patrol that have caught a group. So I'm going to leave this for you.
Thank you.
I also want to just read this first paragraph. This is from Cotulla Independent School District. And Cotulla is further north and west of here, and they're right off the border. And it says, "Dear parents and guardians, please be watchful of your children as they're playing outside, walking home from school, or generally out of the house. Both our communities, Encinal and Cotulla, and the rural areas of our county have experienced a great increase in law enforcement chases and bailouts." So you're getting warnings. I know that this is, it's not only the RGV sector, of course, it's all the way up the Texas Mexico border. Del Rio sector, I'm getting calls from them. They're being overrun. And there's an amazing picture of that too. I also wanted to share, because of where the checkpoints are, and I'll leave this in the packet, we have had a wonderful technology that has been in place that Border Patrol saw a need for and implemented. I believe they got the aerostats from DOD when they were pulling them back from Afghanistan and Iraq, if I'm not mistaken. And they were put in place in the brush country at the checkpoint counties, two of the big ones. One was on the King Ranch and one on the west side of the road. And then later more were put along the border. Well, two of them in the brush country have already been taken away, one much earlier, but this other one just recently off King Ranch. That made all the difference in the world. I think the argument was, well, they're only effective 50 or 60% of the time. But and I've heard from Congressman Cuellar's office with Stacy Forbes, their senior policy advisor that's also a Border Patrol agent, saying, well, the cost is there, and we have bigger and better technologies that are going to come out, and it's going to be tested in March. Well, until you have those technologies in place, and until you have boots on the ground and you bring back the boots on the ground, because Border Patrol has been pushed to the border. I think most of the interior stations now have less than 50% of their agents in the brush, patrolling the roads, and they're down here helping the border agents. And so we can have all the technologies in the world, but until we can get our agents back at the checkpoint counties and change the policy, I too agree, and I speak as Susan Kibbe, but an administration can't be that naive to believe the changes in policies, the 180 degrees that they've implemented wasn't going to make a difference.
Yep.
And you hear crickets from our vice president and our president. They're not even talking about it. So obviously there was a plan in place. Now, how do we turn it around? And taking the opportunity and being in front of all of you is an opportunity for us, because our mission statement, paraphrased, is to be able to enjoy and profit from our land. And when we have these incursions happening, agriculture is on a pretty small margin.
Yep.
And so when we have to fix fences, replace gates, and then not only that, but worry about our families that are living on the ranch, and we have people traversing through property, coming up to the yard, sometimes coming up to the house, and they're not that same migrant that we all grew up with in South Texas. That it's different, and when you have armed smugglers guiding these groups, that's a national security issue. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Kibbe, we appreciate that. Fausto Salinas, rancher and property owner. Time is yours.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna be all over the playing field, because I've heard everybody talking. A lot of it pertains to us. First of all, Border Patrol here, we see them every day, and they're doing a hell of a job.
Yes, they sure are.
You know, the Biden administration comes in here and they stop the border wall. Well, that's fine and dandy. I'm nor for it nor against it. But when you come and mess with our infrastructure, as far as getting irrigation water to the fields, that affects us. So they stop construction, and we're here with a levee that's knocked down, a canal ditch that's been torn apart because the Biden administration decided to stop. So that's fine and dandy, but they should have been out here and see what was going on before they stopped it. Luckily, our irrigation manager was smart enough to go in there, dig out all the dirt that was in our way. After 30 days behind schedule, after our planting window, we finally got water and we have our crops growing, which is good, but we still have the levee problem. Some of those levees are weak, some of those levees have been knocked down. If we have a storm 300 miles around us, even if it doesn't hit the valley, if it hits in Monterrey, if it hits in Del Rio, wherever that storm goes to, all that water flows down to Amistad and to Falcon Lake. If they start releasing water, you're gonna have the valley underwater, because those levees cannot, I mean, they're down. So that's one of our major problems. The other thing is, labor. This year, we planted green beans for the first, I tried it as experimental. A guy came down from Minnesota. He said, we want you to plant some green beans. I said, fine, we'll do it. He says, I said, do you have machines? He says, oh, we don't need machines. You have plenty of labor here in the valley. I said, you're misinformed.
Yeah.
So we start harvesting beans, and the first day we had 80 people come and harvest beans. The following day, we had 30, then 20. So finally, nobody showed up to harvest the beans. That's where I think we need to have a visa where people can actually come from Mexico. People that want to work and go back to Mexico. There's a lot of people that want to come work in the United States that go back to Mexico. And then you have the people that are coming now that are seeking asylum. But if there was a way that we could get those people to come and work for us, do the job, and then they go back to Mexico. If they have to pay taxes, I don't know all the logistics for that, but get it done. I mean, it's to the point that if you can't mechanically harvest it, it's not going to get harvested. And on the Border Patrol side, they need walls. They need a fence.
Yep.
I've seen it in the past, we farm along the river, we have stretches where there's no fence, that people run through there. All they do, the fence is helping them do a better job. You also have places where there's a lot of brush that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has bought. We have had some property that we had a lot of people coming in. We went in, knocked down the brush,
Yeah.
to keep people from hiding in the brush. And it works. And I guess what it all boils down to, as far as this immigration deal, there's a saying in Spanish that says, no tiene culpa el ladrón, sino el que deja la puerta abierta. Sounds better in Spanish, but I'll try to translate it for you. It's not the thief's fault that you left the gate open. So, I mean, it's like he was saying, I think if you give them an opportunity to come in, they're gonna come in. And if you put, I guess you call them sanctions or whatever, saying, to come in, you have to do this, and this, I'm more than sure that there will be a lot of the people coming in.
Thank you. I want to recognize our top Republican on the Immigration Subcommittee. Maybe we'll just kind of do it like a quasi-hearing here, and we'll go with some questions from the members. And Tom, you recognized first. So Mr. McClintock from California, you're recognized. Fire away.
Well, thank you. I'd like to direct this to Sheriff Lauterbach, but also invite everyone to offer your thoughts as well. The most chilling words I've heard on this tour came from a Border Patrol agent who said, "Our border is your border. The problems we're facing here are going to show up in your communities in the very near future. The impact on schools, your kids coming home and saying, well, we didn't really accomplish very much because we had 6 non-English speakers in the classroom, and that's where the teacher had to put all of her attention, so we didn't do much. The impact on public safety. My assessment is that Biden's executive order on returning criminal illegals, deporting them after they've served their terms, now essentially makes the United States a sanctuary nation. So the impact on community safety, the impact on hospitals as people seek attention in emergency rooms and find they're flooded with illegals demanding services. What can we, from your experience, what can we expect to be happening in our communities as these hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens are released into them? And Sheriff, I'll start with you because you deal with it at the ground level.
Well, Representative, you well said, and I appreciate the vision on that. But the infrastructure here in Texas, in Texas, There's 190 counties here that are below 50,000 population. So we're a rural state here in Texas. So the impact in our medical, I'll just give you an example. 2 weeks ago in neighboring Lavaca and Victoria County, where there were 2 horrific crashes where people were pulled from a burning vehicle. There were more than likely 12 illegals that were in that were being smuggled in. Several were life flighted to Houston. We had another horrific crash there with a group of illegals that resulted in more hospitalization stays. The logistics there, 2.5 weeks ago, I got a call from the Border Patrol agent in charge in Corpus saying, "Sheriff, I'm sorry, but we have no more resources for Border Patrol." So you have to ask yourself, as a Texas community, as a Texas county, those resources what are we going to do with a group of illegals here? It's irresponsible for law enforcement to leave them in the communities. We can't do that. I've offered the solution. Can you meet me halfway? I mean, what can we do to partner with you to do this? Because it's not just going to be Border Patrol and ICE that takes care of this. It's going to be all hands on deck for a mass invasion of folks who are coming in here by policy. And so the concerns of the public, of what I talked about earlier, are very real. And so what do we do? What do Texas counties do? What do mayors of cities do when chases occur in their cities? And chases occur on the major highways and then bail off into property with property owner damage that we've had. There's very unlikely that anyone gets paid back on any of those things. There are no real policies that this isn't all lawful behavior that's going on. I mean, we already have laws in place about it.
What's this doing to the schools and the
Well,
community
the
hospitals?
infrastructure, if you're a school here in Texas, you're a 3A classification school here, and you've got 1,000 students, and on one Monday, you've got 200 additional students, then as a school board member and as superintendent of the schools, what are you going to do? We don't have a building. We're going to have to go get a portable building. We're going to have to manufacture some teachers. These are all stress things that require planning, strategy. You don't just put those things together in a matter of hours to try to continue the education process.
What's it doing to your healthcare system?
Well, in small rural health districts, which are taxing entities in Texas, they have their own taxing structure there, but they're not set up for that. There are 12 beds in the hospital district in Jackson County. So you'll quickly, they're not set up. Those people will be sent to Houston or Victoria, seriously injured or sent there. So those are all resources. Those are all square box ambulances or life flight services that are employed now routinely to take care of these things. These are all additional costs that we have. So all stretched resources that we don't have and are not used to being supplied on something that has come about from a policy change.
Mr. Judd, as these illegal immigrants are being released, do they stay on the Texas border or do they migrate across the country?
They do not. Most of the people that cross the border illegally are going to interior states. They're going.
So everything that Sheriff Lauterbach just described is coming to a community near us. In fact, is coming to our community.
It is. Speaking on personal experience, anecdotal evidence is great, but I'd rather go off of personal experience. As an actual Border Patrol agent who goes out, puts on a uniform and patrols the border, I have the opportunity to speak with these individuals that I take into custody. And when you ask them, questions of why they're coming, they'll flat out tell you that they're coming because they understand that there are free benefits here in the United States.
And as I understand it, anyone who claims that they are under 18 is admitted to the country and held by CBP first and then transferred over to HHS until they can arrange travel to the individual sponsor, often a family member who's themselves an illegal alien. Is that correct?
That is correct. Unaccompanied children must be transferred to HHS. We cannot send them back.
So the 18,000 youths that are currently being held in the system are not the same 18,000 that we had 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is throughput that we're measuring, not the total numbers.
So there are going to be some of those 18,000 we had 2 weeks ago. But yes, we're continuing to add on to that, and we're continuing to release people. So yes, they continue
And did
to
I
add.
also understand that if a family crosses the border illegally in the Rio Grande Valley and has in their company a child under 7, they're immediately transferred into the interior?
For the most part, there are some cases that they will be flown to El Paso and expelled in El Paso because of the laws of Matamoros. I believe that's the state directly south of here.
But generally speaking,
But yes,
bring a young child,
generally speaking,
you'll-
yes, if you have a child that is under the age of 7, you will most likely be released into the United States pending a future court hearing.
So the question occurs, do we have much of a border left?
No.
We'll kind of just bounce back and forth and I'm going to get to each of our members. Mr. Biggs from Arizona is recognized, who's been on this issue for a long time.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the members that are here, and Brandon for being here and helping put this thing together. And thanks for each of you participants in this roundtable. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate the candid comments that you made. Mr. Frazier, I particularly thought yours was poignant and prescient, and I appreciate that very much. I want to go something that I just heard Sheriff Lauterbach talking about. And so Mr. Judd knows this because he works in Arizona. Gila Bend is a city that has been a pass-through city, drive-by city in Arizona since long before I came along. About 2,000 people, and Sheriff, you know that town as well. Absolutely no social services whatsoever. They have no way to take care of anybody. And then about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, with 2-hour notice, CBP called up and said, we're going to dump 16 people into your community. And of course the mayor's like, what is this about? Of those 16 people, five family units from Venezuela and 1 from Chile. And what they could not, their attorney said you can't rent a vehicle, so they had to borrow some vans and drive them into Phoenix and put them up at, find a shelter there that would take those 16 individuals. And we were told, as we inquired, that this could happen again. That's the type of thing in your communities? I assume that's happening. Am I wrong, Sheriff?
Well, I don't have any in Jackson County yet, but as I've been told and sent the videos and so forth, we have the non-governmental organizations here in Texas. In this area, we have Catholic Charities that I've been sent videos about who are transporting a large number of immigrants somewhere. And one of the things that Texas sheriffs and other sheriffs across through National Sheriff's Association that we've been questioning is the NGOs' accountability of who they're bringing into this country and where they're going. So I know just here a week and a half ago, Midland overnight was notified by the Biden administration that there were going to be 600 folks that were going to be at a man camp there, an abandoned place from the oil field. Boom, that they were renting, an NGO was renting, and without prior approval from any local governance there. So these things are happening, I believe, in Texas, and they're happening, I'm sure, in other states as the flow of humanity continues to go. And where is the accountability? Who's going where? Where are we? How are we supposed to know? How is a law enforcement agency supposed to, if you pick up 1,000 people in a county, and where they're going to be, and how do you account for that on an instant surge of population that you're not set up for?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll go back to you, Mr. Judd, and you just said a minute ago that effectively we don't have a border because it's so porous and you guys are being rushed, and we won't get into that data right now, but I wanted to ask you, tell us about the transnational criminal organizations that we all refer to as cartels that really seem to exert a lot of influence on the southern side of the U.S.-Mexico border.
they're surviving off of human misery. That's what they're doing. They're bringing these individuals up and they're putting them in conditions that are absolutely deplorable. And they wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for policies. If it weren't for policy changes that this administration has made, they would not be able to advertise their services in countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, but they go as far as China and they advertise services there. I personally have apprehended groups from China, from Bangladesh, from Russia, from Poland, from Brazil. We apprehend people from all over the world, and these criminal organizations are allowed to go into these countries, and they're allowed to advertise their services and make billions of dollars off of human misery, and it's based upon our policies. That's wrong. That is inhumane.
Thanks. And I guess just two quick comments. It has been said by some that I work with the CBP, and Brandon, you may have been the one who said it because I don't have the note in front of me, but that the United States government has now become the logistics arm of the cartels, moving these people. So they bring them across. It used to be pre-2019. They would bring them actually into various locations and they would get their money and hold them in indentured servitude. Now they just bring them to the border and say, like last night, follow the signs. There'll be some signs there. You follow them and go and turn yourself in. And then they'll send you wherever you need to go, wherever you're going to go. So we've become logistics for them. And the other aspect that I guess I wanted to make is, the other point I want to make is that when you said it's policies, we know that it's policy driven. We know that it's this Biden administration's policies that have done this. Why do we know that? Because we simply have to look at when those policies were in place. I'm talking MPP, Remain in Mexico policy. I'm talking about the agreements with the Northern Triangle states of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. I'm talking about the incentive factor. We all respond to incentives. How about $1,400 per illegal alien in the COVID relief package? How about free education? How about you'll get transported wherever you need to go? And once you're in, it's almost impossible for you to be sent out. And that's really what's going on. And so this is, President Trump found a problem and he solved it. President Biden saw a solution and now he's dissolved that and created a massive humanitarian crisis. That's what's going on. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
I'll be real quick here. Ms. Kibbe, was that an aerostat, the piece of equipment that you referred to, that you had used over in your region?
Yeah, so it's like a large blimp, and Brandon can probably describe that a little bit better, but yes, that has a mounted camera with a view shed up to 25 miles in some of them.
And those were used over in Iraq, is that correct?
Yes.
They were used over in the Iraq War?
Right.
Okay.
And so I think they were in DOD warehouses, and Border Patrol said, or DHS said, let's try this in the field, and it was very successful.
Terrific. I want to just go through a couple questions really quickly. Mr. Judd, has the Biden administration contacted you directly to ask for your input on this issue?
I have spoken with the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I have not spoken with Vice President Harris, nor have I spoken with President Biden, but I did have communications with President Trump in the past, as well as his Vice President and his DHS Secretary.
But you have heard from the Biden administration?
From Secretary
Mayorkas.
yes.
Have you heard from Vice President Harris?
I have not.
And isn't she in charge? Wasn't she put in charge of this? What's happening on the southern border?
She was, yes.
Okay, and you haven't heard from her?
I have not.
Okay. Sheriff, I have just one final question here, and I'm hoping you'll indulge my question here. We know that public policymakers always want more dollars because there's always more projects to complete. You can always do a better job. But if you had to make a decision of whether there should be a policy change at the border from where we're at right now, or more dollars, and that policy change would go back to where we were pre-January 20th, which one would you take? Would you take more dollars, or would you take the policy change?
Clearly the policy change.
Thank you. I yield back.
Do you expect, Mr. Judd, do you expect to hear from the Vice President? Do you anticipate hearing from her?
I do not.
Okay. Let's go to the gentlelady from Indiana, Ms. Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my second time at the board in the last few weeks, and I can tell perverse incentives and lack of leadership from the current administration created escalated this situation and very serious humanitarian and national security crisis. I see Border Patrol overwhelmed, and it has created not just more power, gives more power to Mexican cartels, but do you believe it also creates for more opportunity for terrorists to cross the border? I want to ask you, Mr. Judd.
Yeah, we just saw that in El Centro, California, where two individuals, well, their names match the terrorist watch list. I have not confirmed that they are in fact the individuals, but we do know that they were from Yemen, and we do know that their names matched on the terrorist watch list. So yes, that's absolutely concerning and needs to be concerning. What also has to be concerning is on a daily basis, we are having about 1,000 people that evade apprehension. They're detected crossing the border, but they evade apprehension. We do not know who they are. We do not know where they came from. That has to be scary.
And then one more quick question. Right now, all policies of previous administration were terminated, including MPP. The only policy they're partially applying in Title 42, which allows to expel some of these migrants under pandemic and national emergency. What is going to happen when CDC declares that we don't have emergency pandemic? What tools do you have, and what are you going to do at the border?
We have no tools to deal with that. That's why we're praying that Title 42 does not go away anytime soon, because if it does, then we're going to be releasing nearly everybody into the interior of the United States.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from Utah, Mr. Owens.
Thank you. Let me just say, first of all, what's going to come out of this last year is I'm just so proud to see the unsung heroes that America's waking up to. And as we spent the last couple days, see the border men and women who literally have the courage, compassion, and ingenuity to do great things. So I applaud you guys. Keep it up. I'm old school. I grew up down south in the 60s when my parents taught me if there was a man who saw evil coming to his family, abuse to his kids and his wife, and the best he could do is close his eyes, he was called a coward. We have an administration of cowards, period. And it's time for, and I think President Biden thinks that because he closed his eyes, America's going to close ours, but we're not going to close our eyes to this stuff. Americans cross the border recognizing that what's happening at the border is coming to their town. And I'm glad to see you guys giving a voice. It doesn't matter what side it doesn't matter what party. We want our kids to have security, safety, and a future in a great country. And we're not going to have that if we continue to allow the hard left. Now, I'm not talking to Democrats and Republicans, we're together on this. The hard left are those who hate our culture. And they're going to try to mass invasion. Sheriff is a great word for it. I've always thought it was strategic chaos, but they're doing this on purpose. So let's continue good work. America's going to be behind you, and we're going to find a way to support everything you guys are doing. Quick question, Brandon. We had a chance to see these young kids. By the way, can I just say this real quick? It breaks my heart to see these young people sitting on the floor, the age of. I have 15 grandkids. I have one artistic grandson. To see these young babies sitting on the floor, this one young girl, artistic, 7 years old, and the entire time we're there, just her ears, her tears in her eyes the entire time. And we have people in D.C. that could care less when they see a 3 and a 5-year-old girls drop from a 14 high wall, when they see a 9-year-old young boy abandoned. Heard of a story last night, a young girl, trauma could not speak anymore because she was gang raped. These are the stories that we're not being told. And we have a complicit media who refuses to talk about this journey, this magnet of these young girls and boys. Many will not make it. Many will never talk to their parents again. Many just make a question mark because we have an administration do not look at these young people as people, but as a strategy. So I want to say that. It breaks my heart. It really does, see what I saw yesterday. Brandon, last night we saw these young people walking into TOPS. Remarkably an innovative solution by the Border Patrol. Thank you guys for that. How long would it take, once they get here, once they're processed, to be somewhere in Wisconsin, Utah, Georgia? How long will it take them to be from that point of walking into this location to counties across our country?
First off, thank you. Thank you for recognizing how horrendous this problem is. Thank you for recognizing that Border Patrol agents have to find dead bodies in the desert that are abandoned by criminal cartels, by the smugglers. Thank you for understanding that it is not humane, the current system that we're in. It's not humane to encourage people to put themselves in the hands of these dangerous smugglers. Thank you for understanding that and recognizing that first off. You'll never know how much that is appreciated by the Border Patrol agents that have to see this on a daily basis. We have to see the misery that exists because of policy, and we have to deal with that, and we have to take that home with us every single day. So thank you very much. It doesn't take long, Congressman. We can actually process individuals and release them to Catholic Charities, for one. The non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, within 8 hours. It can happen as fast as that. And then as long as the NGOs, and you know, I do trust Catholic Charities. When Catholic Charities say that they're testing people for COVID, I do trust them. And there's other NGOs that I don't have near as much confidence in. But if those individuals do not test positive for COVID-19 and they're not asked to quarantine, they can be in Utah the next day. They can be as far as Virginia on a plane the very next day. So you could cross the border illegally one day and be in Virginia the very next day, depending upon how fast we can process those individuals and release them to Catholic Charities.
One last question. We had, obviously, a policy that was working, a system that was working. If we can do one thing, one policy at this particular time, without changing everything, what would that be so the Biden administration, if they would show up, ask the questions, and truly care, what is one policy that you say would make a difference and turn this around?
I would set up courts immediately on the border to hold these people in custody pending the adjudication of their asylum claim. If we did that, we would address this issue and we would stop the fraudulent asylum claims almost immediately.
Okay. One last statement. What we're seeing is human trafficking. We used to call it slavery, when people use other people's dreams and bodies for their profit. You mentioned some numbers, $4,000 per illegal immigrant, child, whatever. I think we had over 170,000 immigrants, legal immigrants coming out. Was it 100,000 or 170?
171,000 in the month of March, 100,000 in the month, and that's what we know of. That's just the known number. But yes, 171,000 in March.
So let's say 100,000 at 4,000 per individual, $40 million cash to evil people, and we're complicit. It's nothing worse than the slavery we got rid of 200 years ago. So let's not fool ourselves. People are dying, there's misery, and if we sit back and think there's nothing to it, we're just as bad as what we now say was terrible 200 years ago. I yield back.
Well said, Burgess. Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan, and I don't know if I've got the mic on or not. I don't hear it. Okay, good. Since I get the bat cleanup, subject to what Mr. Jordan might say at the end, if I could just take a second. I'm, like several of us, am a relatively new member of Congress. Came to the border right after being elected in a special in 2019, in October 2019, which is immediately after that enormous surge in May, and after the migrant protection protocol had been undertaken. And what was fascinating about that, from seeing the videos from earlier in that May timeframe, what was being faced, how remarkably situation had changed and had been brought significantly under control. and to the point others have made, as additional obstacles were encountered, new court decisions prompting new surges and so forth, the Trump administration responded well and innovated and developed a set of policies that were working. Coming back here now, following that experience, I just want to take a second or two and sort of review just a few vignettes of where we've been the last couple of days and what we've seen, because for me, all those things assemble into my mind as an image of what several have referred to earlier as chaos. So we went to the Donna Temporary Detention Facility for unaccompanied minors. And there we saw pods that are supposed to be used for, I think, 53. Is that, Jim, is that right number? With 33 having 527 people in them. Pods. And the one thing they pointed out, the pods, they have these containment units, and they have now plastic walls that they say they mentioned that they had replaced chain link fencing with the plastic. And I asked the person why they had done that, and he sort of paused. And I said, optics? And he said, I'm glad you said it, so that because I didn't know what word to use. But to me, that's a picture of chaos. This is they're running about, they had 3,000, I think, about 3,800 people in this facility, hugely overloaded. And it's just been stood up and built out over a period of about 5 days very recently. That was at the Donna Detention Facility. Then we went to the wall sites that are incomplete and have these gaps. You got construction machinery, you got materials, you got disarray out there, you've got the situation with the levee being undermined and incomplete. The 60-day pause period has expired, but the Army Corps of Engineers has not, for whatever reason. There's no resumption, there's no clear path. The Biden administration says it's thinking about resuming construction in some portions. It hasn't been thought out at all. It's being improvised moment by moment. Or if I think about TOPS that you made reference to, Mr. Owens, the place where, and to people who may be watching it, everybody here knows what TOPS is, but it's that thing we've seen under a bridge, the Ansel Duas Bridge, where migrants are coming in, going through what they call Disney lines, these sort of back and forth where you just hold people, and through various processing stages. And if they are a family unit with, I think, the children, a tender-age child under 7, then you're processing them through, Brandon, as you said, as quickly as several hours and then released. Just a constant flow. 12,000, I think, was a number that was mentioned had been released through that facility. And of course, that's separate from the unaccompanied minors that are going to these temporary detention facilities, and then they go on to Office of Refugee Resettlement. But we saw yesterday afternoon with the Texas Public Safety, we went with the troopers on their boats on the Rio Grande, and then last night at the river, multiple groups. Everybody who goes out and goes to one of these trips takes a quick jaunt. Thank you, Brandon, for taking us out there, and you see just group after group after group of people walking up that road, following the arrows to come into TOPS, to be processed, to be released in the United States. And then the visit to the Office of Refugee Resettlement facility for, once you're at the detention facility and they're over the time limit there, in every case, well over the time limit they're supposed to keep unaccompanied minors. But then they go to these temporary facilities under the control of Health and Human Services to be placed. But what they told us about placement is you might be sending a 15-year-old to a 21-year-old illegal alien in another part of the country who may not be able to provide sufficient family structure. In fact, if you do that over and over again, what exactly are you creating? You're creating chaos. And on March 13, we had a hearing in Washington, and I asked Secretary Mayorkas if the administration expected this or was surprised by it. And he was thrown by that question, and he said he really didn't have an expectation. That was his answer at the moment. I think he just didn't want to give the answer that was genuine. But I also had the opportunity at the Donna temporary facility to ask CBP Chief Patrol Agent Brian Hastings whether, and it's just, Brandon, what you've said, whether the administration had been informed what was going to happen if these policies were ditched. And they did. That's what I understand, that consistently, Border Patrol warned the administration that this would occur if these policies were disposed of. So, as many have said, they engendered chaos deliberately. And one other thing that I've learned this time that I didn't really understand is the degree to which cartels are controlling all of this. That is to say, your folks have told us, Brandon, that no one comes across the river without having paid the cartel. And I also understand that these things, many Americans have heard about remittances back into their home countries, and I understand the cartels are involved in that. They're intercepting money. If they can enforce by retaliation against family members if remittances aren't being made to their satisfaction. And Mr. Biggs, you said it extraordinarily well. You said that the United States government has become the logistics arm of the cartels. But, Mr. Frazier, to your point about it being evident that it is a purposeful strategy by this administration, it's not merely that they've become the logistics arm in a passive and clueless way. This administration is a willing accomplice of the cartels that bedevil society throughout Latin America in the policy that they've chosen. And they characterize it as humane. And the destruction is befalling American communities all over this country. And so, Mr. Frazier, maybe I'd go back to that, because I'm troubled with with what that implies. If there's, and I've heard various motives attributed to that, but it seems to be deliberate. It's hard to argue against that. It appears that given sufficient time, particularly with unaccompanied minors being flooded into the country, all over the country, in these difficult and ill-formed social structures that you're forcing people in and trying to find a place to put them, that there's a prospect of replicating in the United States the social conditions that effectively created failed societies in these countries from which these folks are coming. Why in the world would anybody in American political life undertake that? And I think it may sound rhetorical, but I'll be honest with you, it is not a rhetorical question. Why in the world would anybody pursue that strategy and claim it to be humane?
You want an answer?
Yes, I'd like your answer.
I'm probably not the best guy in the world to answer this, and I spend a whole lot more time with livestock and crops and this, that, and other. So a lot of things I see tend to lean to, or the actions people take. I'm like, well, that's exactly how, my wife's chickens act, or that's exactly how my, the grandkid acts, and is exactly like the goats act, or whatever. I mean, just all these references. But I think there's some folks out there, for whatever reason, have this belief in socialism, communism, whatever it is so strong that the government takes care of everything somehow or another, and to create that, and they have that belief, even though they look around maybe and they see where that style of government has failed over and over, they still have that belief that's right. And we're all compassionate. You all feel for these folks, but when you have a group of folks that are in need, that have some needs. We try to make in the U.S., we've tried real hard to have equal opportunity, not necessarily equal outcome, but equal opportunity. We got free school and this, and for whatever reason, we've got folks in our society that don't necessarily take advantage of the education, or don't necessarily, take advantage of some training programs for some skills or whatever they could get for jobs. There's a variety of reasons, but for whatever reason, there's a group of folks that don't do that. Well, all of a sudden, things kind of turn around and we don't have that group, or we have fewer and fewer of them. And then that doesn't fit my narrative that government has to take care of everything for me. So I got to turn this whole deal around. And that's what I'm saying. You're letting these folks in, And partly, a group we had in a week ago or so, one of the congressmen then made a comment like, well, in 10 years they'll be voting. It ain't going to take 10 years. You watch, these folks will be ready to vote the next time we go to the elections. When you guys are all up here in a couple of years, there'll be some of these folks voting. And, we have to create a need for those folks. We have to, and I don't know why exactly, folks feel that way, but if I'm losing my clientele because they've all worked their way up the ladder and they have, skills and jobs and everything and doing well and providing for their families, they don't need me anymore. Well, I got to find some new customers. Somebody's got to need me. And I think that kind of goes to some of this. But, and here I go looking at animals again. When I started going to Washington, D.C. 2-3 times a year, lobbying for various things, mostly agriculture-related stuff. And when I went up there the first time, probably 30 years ago, I couldn't tell who was a DNR probably 80% of the time. We'd go to their office, we'd visit what our concerns were, foreign policy, whatever it was, and we'd leave. No, you couldn't tell. But I'll tell you, the last 2 or 3 years, it's gotten obvious. You got to be on one side of the fence or the other. There's no play both sides or work together deal at all in most cases. I mean, it's just nuts how divided all that's got. And I just kind of look at it as, like I said, I have a bad habit of looking at things as I see in animals. We got a Labrador retriever and a pointer dog out here that we all know what those are. And they like to chase birds or point, quail for us, this, that, and other. And I got my collie dog over here that's a cow dog, wants to chase cows. But they're both still dogs. I mean, they have things they like and are different, but they both still are dogs. This country's gradually becoming, we're not even the same species anymore. I mean, we're just getting so far apart on our beliefs. And I don't know if it's necessarily folks growing up in more of an urban setting that their beliefs and their whatever experiences they had versus folks in a suburban or rural setting like I grew up are so much different. But we're just becoming different species. I hate to say that, but we have folks that they believe that system of government, be it communism, socialism, Marxism, whatever those names are. I'm not sure if I know the definition of all those, but to where basically government provides for everything. So, and we're just taking that step. We start giving away $1,400 now, and you just wait. It's universal income now. Everybody's going to get to $4,100. Now we're going to take, $2,500 of that $1,400 back in taxes next go round. And I wish you guys would really keep an eye on that because throwing that ball out there.
It's coming.
But I mean, just and then when we have our universal health care and all these folks coming across, they're going to go to our schools. They're going to, if they get sick, they're not necessarily skilled labor. If they were skilled folks, they don't have a problem finding jobs. It's the unskilled, folks that have trouble, and they're going to be the ones that need using these services, and they're going to look to government for them, and government's going to give it to them, and that's the system.
One last question. Brandon, I appreciated your idea about how an alternative approach to take that might be able to secure the border. And what you said is create the immigration courts at the border in sufficient quantity to move cases through and let people be detained until their asylum claim is adjudicated. And I just want to clarify one aspect of that. From what I understand, if there's an unaccompanied minor or there is a family unit involving unaccompanied minors, then that adjudication would have to occur within 20 days, because isn't that the case that detention can only last that long? And if that's the case, how could you do it without a remain in Mexico type policy?
So you can transfer them to state-sponsored facilities as long as they meet certain government requirements. Okay, you do not have to let them go as long as it's state-sponsored facilities that meet requirements that have to be least restrictive facilities, that have to provide schooling, have to provide physical preparedness, different things like that. As long as they can progress as any other individual could progress, you can, in fact, hold them pending their asylum case. That would be a little bit difficult, but again, you wouldn't have to do it for long. We saw it with MPP. Yep. It shuts off immediately. Representative Jordan, may I please address Congressman Tiffany's question that he had for Mr. Lauterbach? Mm-hmm. You asked, would you rather have money or would you rather have policy? I'm a union. I would rather have policy. I would rather have policy than I would more agents. Even though more agents would bring more money into my union, I would rather have policy because policy will end this problem.
That's great. that's probably a good way to end our discussion. I want to thank Brandon again and Border Patrol Council for hosting this for us. I want to thank all of you for being here and the difference you are making, and the message you provided each of us that we will take back to the Congress and fight to change the policy back to the one that was actually working, and will be helpful for our great country. So thank you all for being. Unfortunately, we'll be able to mingle a little bit here with you separately, but we have to do a thing here in a few minutes as well. So thank you all again.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
As we just wrapped up about an hour and 22 minutes, Representative Jim Jordan and others talking about the situation here at the border, and we heard from several different people and different, I guess, angles of how this affects everyone here along the border, everything from national security to local businesses to landowners. We've heard a little bit of perspective from different people. We're going to transition from inside here outside. There is a press conference scheduled here in about 10 minutes. We'll make our way outside for that. Meanwhile, we'll kind of give you a recap. If you're just now joining us, welcome. We are live here in Edinburgh, Texas, the National Border Patrol Council here. And for this really eye-opening experience here that we've seen across the border. Now, if you recall, last week we were here with Ted Cruz and other senators. As they toured the border, we were able to kind of hold that press conference as well. So let's go ahead and make our way out here. Glad you're joining us. We are now transitioning out to the front here, to the left here, Joe. We had the exclusive on that roundtable situation here, and we're thankful to be able to do that for you. So hopefully, if you're just now joining us, go back and rewatch kind of what we just talked about the last hour and 22 minutes. And what couple things that I learned here was, and I mentioned it before, but now to hear it again, it really is an eye-opener, is the schools, the impact that this has on the school system here locally, and the fact that a lot of these schools already are, faced with some very tough challenges as far as capacity goes. And so now a lot of these kids are back into the system, and of course these teachers are having to deal a lot with that situation. So the impact on the schools, the impact on national security is very difficult. Hey, we want to thank our good partner in all of this, and that is our good friend Mike Lindell over at MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell over at MyPillow.com. This is a very important time in history to go and support a patriot like Mike, and actually a portion of those proceeds goes back to helping us as well. So do us a favor right now, go to MyPillow.com and put in the promo code RSBN in checkout. That's promo code RSBN in checkout, and receive up to 66% off on your entire order. So go to MyPillow.com, MyPillow.com, and put in the promo code RSBN at checkout and get up to 66% off. He has been in the middle of all this cancel culture that we're going through right now, and not only do they want to cancel him in the way his voice, but they also want to cancel his business. And so now is the time that you can do just that. So go to MyPillow.com, and put in the promo code RSBN at checkout for that. We're so glad you're joining us. We are live here in Edinburgh, Texas, just north of McAllen, weeks ago. This is some of the things we heard from the representatives in the room and other border agency specialists. This is a security issue. This is a national security at risk. We've seen a couple individuals come across the border that are on the terror watch list, the no-fly list, and if there's two, then there's probably way more than that that's getting across that we're not catching. And we also heard a lot that our society has borders. You think about your home, you think about your business, think about our country should have borders. That's kind of how we're set up in this country is by borders, and the impact of not having borders hurts everyone. We heard landowners talk about how it's really not safe to have your kids out at certain hours of the day in fear of kidnapping situations, or some of these criminals coming across the border with guns. We heard one gentleman say it was frequently seen some of these drug cartels having ARs with them as they walk across the land with these immigrants, trying to bring them to the point where they would then be picked up by another coyote. So it is a security, it's a safety issue here as well. And you talk about the businesses that are impacted in this area. Talk about the amount of disruption in everyday business here with the immigrations coming across here. And we did a little Border Patrol tour right before we came here, and the gentleman was talking about how night after night, 75, 80 big groups of these immigrants cross over, and it's very tough to process that many people. And night after night, and if you've probably seen the stories of immigrants being processed under a bridge or underneath a tent, and that was because that was the only place they had to house and protect from the shelter if it was raining or if it's cold or anything like that, get some shade. So they're not set up here. The resources are not here to accommodate this much of the immigration that we're seeing. And we heard it several times in here today that the Biden administration were warned that if they roll back some of these policies that were being implemented at that time, President Trump, that you would see this happening. And those were ignored. And so people, we heard inside, they're angry. They're angry at the fact that we were warned that this was happening. Earlier today, we saw big stretches of the border that were wide open, that were basically stopped during construction. Go to our website, and we're going to put up some pictures on that, and go to our social media as well. You'll see pictures of that. Hopefully, Biden administration said yesterday they are looking into the possibility of completing that wall and continuing structure of that wall in certain portions that are wide open at this point. Here in Texas, from what we can see, there is many portions of the wall that's wide open. I know that along the Arizona border as well, there are some portions that need to be completed. And if you think about in your daily lives what we have borders around, we have borders around our home, our office, our business, subdivisions. This is a national security crisis. We heard one gentleman inside say that we've become a sanctuary nation at this point of really taking in all these illegal immigrants and finding a home. And one of the things that was really criticized is the fact that once they are processed, these court dates, let me just read a stat here, these court dates are basically 80% of the people do not go back to attend their court date hearing once they've been detained, and because of 3% of those people actually get to stay in the United States. So when they get the court date, they don't show up for that, knowing that only 3% chance that they'll get to stay in the country. So it's a very, it seems like the system is broke as far as how we track these individuals. I'm going to go, as you can see behind me, they're doing a little bit of sound check, getting ready for this press conference that will start here momentarily. I was told it will only last about 23 minutes or so. I do want to make sure that if you could, Joe, go up there and make sure that microphone is actually in a good position. I want to make sure that we have everything set up here as we should. But we're glad you're joining us. Please, right now, share this broadcast and let people know, hey, if you've had some questions about the border, tune into Right Side right now, as we are going to bring you this uninterrupted press conference about the border. Jim Jordan, representative from Ohio, just wrapped up an hour and 22-minute discussion about that. Several people were there, landowners, Border Patrol agents, other representatives around the country. And if you think, one of the messages that I really found that resonated with me is that if you think that this is just an issue that affects the communities along the border here, the problems you see here will make it to the neighborhoods wherever you live. So when you turn on the TV and you see the images You see the people, the crime. You see some of the displacement of kids and the school systems being burdened, and just all the things that comes with taking in a large percentage of people on a short period of time. Those problems will eventually make it to your city, even if you're watching us from the northern states of America. Maybe you're in the Midwest. You don't have to live around Texas and Arizona to experience these problems. So that's why we must address them now, and that's why we're here. And you heard a lot of people today say, we need to get Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, needs to come down here. She has been put in charge of solving this border crisis, yet has not made an appearance at any of these detention centers that we heard of. I mean, you can only imagine what it's like to be in a facility that might only be good. Okay, we got a 2-minute warning on that. Thanks. We got the 2-minute warning on this, but you can imagine what the conditions are like in these detention centers as the capacity to hold this many people at once. It's not set up for that. Okay, I'm going to back aside. We're going to quickly, here in a few minutes, plug in our audio so we can get some audio checks, but we got a 2-minute warning on that. Like I said, we appreciate you joining us for this, and if you could, please go to our website, rsbnetwork.com. That's rsbnetwork.com, and help support our network. We are viewer funded. We have partners like Mike Lindell over at MyPillow. We certainly appreciate that. But we definitely want to make sure that we continue to serve you. So if you would, please just go to our website at rsbnetwork.com/give. or /donate rather, and give what you can. Okay, we're about a minute out. We're going to go ahead and plug in the audio here. Stand by for press conference with Jim Jordan.
Slide on in there. Well, let me thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We just had, I think, a very productive roundtable discussion with some very important folks. And the head of Border Patrol Council, Mr. Judd, said the surge currently at the border is unlike anything they have ever seen. Sheriff Lauterbach of Jackson County said this is complete chaos that we are witnessing now. And that is certainly what we've seen over the last day and a half. When we were with Border Patrol agents yesterday, they told us that last month was the busiest month in the history of Border Patrol since they've been keeping records, since they've been keeping data. Busiest month on record. 40% of manpower is currently used for processing illegal migrants. Yesterday we saw at the Donna facility one pod, which is supposed to, under current COVID protocols, house at a maximum 33 children, and yet there were 527 kids in that pod alone. So when they say this is chaos and unlike anything we have ever seen, that is true. And it is all driven by policy, as we heard loud and clear from all four of the folks who spoke with us, the members of Congress today. The policy that said we will no longer keep the Remain in Mexico policy in place as we evaluate the claims of people trying to get into our country, the policy that says we're not going to deport individuals, and of course the announcement from the current administration saying that they will not continue construction on the wall. That is why we see this amazing surge, this unbelievable surge, unlike any, as Mr. Judd said before, unlike any we've ever seen in the history of Border Patrol. And it sort of raised the obvious question, and Scott had said this in the roundtable we just had, it raised the obvious question, is this intentional? Is this deliberate? Is the Biden administration deliberately imposing these policies because this is what they want? And I don't know what other conclusion you could reach, which is troubling. So the solution is pretty simple. Go back to the policies that were working in the previous administration, and that message came through loud and clear over the last day and a half. I'd like to turn to the top Republican on the Immigration Subcommittee of the full Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you all for being here. I must tell you, in all of my years in the Congress, this has been the most disturbing field tour that I've ever taken. Yesterday, we watched literally hundreds of illegal migrants crossing the border and turning themselves into the Border Patrol. Groups in the company of children who were under 7 had their basic biometric information taken down and then dispatched to bus stations to continue into the United States. Unaccompanied minors, or those who claim to be under 18, are taken into custody by Border Patrol. They're warehoused in CBP holding facilities. Those are the COVID incubators that you've been seeing in the pictures that have been smuggled out from these facilities until they can be transferred to HHS. HHS then makes travel arrangements for them to be sent to their final destination, often a family member who's already an illegal alien. All are being waved in. Only single adults and groups with older youths that are being turned away, but that's only because of Title 42, which is effective only during the COVID pandemic. Border Patrol warns that when 42 goes away, our border is completely gone. And this is getting worse by the day. 100 family units illegally crossed the border the week of the election. By the week of the inauguration, the number had increased to 1,100 family units. It reached 15,000 the week ending March 24th. There were 100,000 total encounters with the Border Patrol in February. Folks, that is the population of the entire city of South Bend, Indiana. In March, that number grew to 170,000. That's the entire population of Salem, Oregon. And that doesn't include the 130,000 estimated gotaways. That's the entire population of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. HHS just issued a memo, we're told, calling for 60,000 beds in facilities for unaccompanied minors. The average stay for a minor, we're told, is 24 days. That means they're expecting nearly 1 million unaccompanied minors to enter illegally this year. We are feeding the Mexican crime cartels. The crime cartels are taking in roughly $500 million a month through this human trafficking made possible by the president's policies. Illegal immigrants often arrive here deeply in their debt and in effect become indentured servants. The debts are enforced by threats against family members who remain, and the mass importation of young migrants gives these crime cartels a steady stream of new human resources for the gangs. The most chilling words that I have heard in this entire trip was spoken by a Border Patrol agent who reminded us our border is your border. These illegal immigrants don't stay and congregate in border towns. They're on their way to communities all across the country. They're guaranteed by the Biden administration not to be deported even if they commit crimes. In fact, under his executive orders, our entire country is now a sanctuary nation. The terrible impact this will have on public safety, local schools, local resources, housing supply, public schools, hospital emergency rooms, and the ability of working class Americans to earn a living will be keenly felt in every community in our country unless these policies change. Among his first acts as president, Joe Biden abandoned construction of the border wall. He announced illegal immigrants would not be deported, and he ended the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers. This sent a powerful message across the third world. Gallup estimates there are 42 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean who want to come to the United States. And now they can, and now they are.
Thank you, Tom. Congressman Sparks from Indiana.
Thank you for being here. I can tell this is my second trip to the border in the last few weeks. And I can tell perverse incentive and lack of leadership from this administration create a real serious crisis at the border. And it's really escalated it. And there is a lot of discussion, is it crisis or not? So let's just talk about some numbers. 40% of our Border Patrol agents are busy processing people and changing diapers. It means that they cannot do their job protecting the borders. What does it mean? It means that Mexican cartels are controlling the border. It means that we have 1,000 people just at this location per day crossing the border, that they see them on the video, but they cannot act to that. It means that they're so overwhelmed that they had to release 12,000 families, 12,000 people in the country without going through processes that has to happen. Is it not a crisis? We saw terrorists trying to cross the border recently. This is a national security and humanitarian crisis. Let's look at some other numbers. We have cartels making almost $500 million in a month on human trafficking and making these people into slaves. We have a situation where 6 times increase in drug smuggling across the border. That is not a crisis. We have a situation where parents send 6 and 8-year-olds kids to cross the border. These kids are crying because we created perverse incentives. If I would be sending my 2 teenage daughters through the border and also let them to sit in pods, they have, instead of 33 people, they have over 500 people, I would be in jail as an American mother. So that is not a crisis. And this crisis is not a Texas crisis. This crisis is coming to Indiana and all other states because we don't have a border from Texas. And right now we don't have a 1,000 border, and it's a huge problem. We also, it's a financial expenditure for us. You know, we cannot take care of our homeless veterans, but spending over $800 per day housing some of these families in hotels. And when this administration says that, you know, this is not a change of policy, they are either naive or incompetent, because there has been change in policy. So I just tell you, what about the solutions? There are the long-term solutions that we have to have good legal immigration system and legal infrastructure. But there are also some short-term solutions that need to happen. This administration has to deal with asylum seekers and set up operations here to deal with them quickly. And this administration have to fix, some of the borders walls that started to be built because it created hazards. It's a flood hazard and also safety hazards. And this administration needs to think what kind of policy we're going to have to let our border patrol to do their job protecting the border. And they need to set HHS to help them and have a proper tools and finances for them, because after Section 42 goes away, we're really in trouble. So hopefully you can have this conversation, and we're going to talk to our Democrat and Republican colleagues and to this administration, because it is not acceptable. Thank you.
The gentleman from the great state of Utah, Congressman Owens.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank in a big way our unsung heroes, the men and women on the borders, that Americans will find out who truly has been saving our country and our culture here. I have 15 grandchildren from 13 to 6 months. As I talk about this, I want you guys to think deep about your kids, your grandkids. It's interesting, we have these young people walking hundreds and thousands of miles to get to a place their parents think is safe. We went through the process yesterday, and I saw this 7-year-old girl, autistic, couldn't tell them who the parents were. And I sat there as we were talking with these great men and women, and I would glance over every few minutes, and she had tears in her eyes, just wouldn't stop crying. She's been there for 17 days, by the way. She still can't stop crying. We saw a video of a 9-year-old young boy that was left abandoned in the desert. Heard about a young lady who now cannot talk because of the trauma of being gang raped. These are our children, my friends. Whether they're American or Mexican or Guatemalan, it doesn't matter. These are our children. And we have an administration that does not have the backbone to come down here and give encouragement to these great men and women that are doing the job that's being overwhelmed right now. They don't have the backbone to come see the misery that their policy is giving to these boys and girls, babies, men and women who take that trip. Many will never make it. There are people you and I will never ever meet. Their parents will never ever see again because they're going to die alone somewhere on this travel, in this trek, as we talk about everything else but the issues here. I don't care if we're Democrats or Republicans. We're people who love our nation. We're people who love our culture. And this has been on purpose to a mass invasion of cultures that's not ours. That we don't give these young boys and girls a chance to assimilate. They can grow up and vote against every single thing we believe in. It's on purpose. So I'm going to say to President Biden and Vice President Harris, get some backbone. Get some compassion. Come down to the border and see what mess you've made down here that we're trying to fight to save our nation. And by the way, I don't want to ever hear the word reparation again from these Democrats. Reparation is for slavery 200 years ago. We're seeing slavery today. Human trafficking, my friends. Sex trafficking, my friends, today. And they turn their eyes away, close their eyes as if there's nothing happening. Let's get on as a country. Let's make sure this message goes out strong. And I don't care what side of the aisle we're on. We love our kids, we love our nation, we love our culture. And we're not going to let the hard left destroy it by bringing misery to our nation. Thank you.
Congressman Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Congressman Jordan. I'm so pleased to be with my colleagues today, be down on the border with them visiting this part of the border. I'm pleased with the roundtable we just had and appreciate the ranchers, the law enforcement, the policy advisors, the Border Patrol agents, representatives that were participating in that roundtable, give us some advice. Let me tell you, I've been down to the border many, many times. I've been down to this border when it's been under control, operational control, I would say, and then coming back here over the last day or so and seeing something that's horrific to see. It's not humane. The policies of this administration are inhumane. This president must own the catastrophe he has created, this human suffering and misery that he has created. 2 weeks ago, he appointed Kamala Harris to be his point person on this issue. She's crisscrossed the country, taken holidays, can't be bothered to come visit the border to see what her administration's policies have wrought. Let me tell you a story. 2 quick stories, then I'll tell you how you get out of this. Number one, small community in my state, Gila Bend, which is the number 2 overruns, number 2 right now for immigrants through that Tucson sector. Small community. No social services whatsoever. They get a phone call. They're going to bring 16 people into that community. That doesn't sound like a lot to you. But here's a community that has no hospital, no social service safety net whatsoever. They can't even rent vans to transport them into Phoenix so they can get help. They have to use personal vehicles and get volunteers to drive these 16 people which were all 6, there were 6 family units, 5 from Venezuela, 1 from Chile. There's no guarantee that's not going to happen again. And if you think, if you live in an interior community, it won't happen to you, it will happen. People don't stay on the border. They're being released by the thousands every day into the United States interior. About a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I was down in the Arizona border in a place called 3 Points.
near San Miguel. We saw there were 16 people on the other side of the border. The Border Patrol was trying to keep them in there because these are runners. These are drug runners. We didn't see anything else that day, but that night a group of 112 was apprehended, surrendered. In that group, the oldest person was 94 years old. 94. The youngest, 4 years old. No parents, no guardians, no siblings, no aunt and uncle, no cousins, no grandparents. Somebody put that 4-year-old into the hands of the ruthless sex, drug, and human traffickers that we call the cartels. The cartels are controlling our borders. No person crosses this river without the cartels knowing about it and approving of it. And the same is said on the nearly 2,300 miles of this border. There are some things that need to happen to bring this under control and get our nation back, quite frankly. The first one is this president has got to stand up and say, no, you cannot come into our country. We will send you back. You must come legally. It is his voice that said during the campaign he wanted to see a, quote, surge on the border, close quote. You must take that stand. Then the second thing he must do, he must reinstitute the MPP program. He needs to get back to Mexico. That's why the president of Mexico says, this is Biden's mess. It is Biden's mess. He needs to re-engage with the Northern Triangle states of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And he needs to make sure that they're engaged just like they were in the PACE program. He needs to rescind the $1,400 per illegal alien incentive from the COVID package. And quite frankly, what he could do that would be incredibly effective is to instruct the asylum or the immigration judges to not worry about the asylum backlog. There are hundreds of thousands of those people already in the country that are waiting for a court hearing. Guess what? They're not coming back to court. But we have people on the border today who are coming across because of the promise of asylum that this administration has given. You can establish those courts. They can grant due process and remove people who have fraudulent claims, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of people who make an asylum claim. You do those things, and you can do them quickly, this problem, this crisis, this catastrophe begins to go away in short order, very quickly. Because people respond to incentives. Cartel is maybe a crime organization, but it is a business organization. And they respond to those incentives, and you take them away, and people will stay home, and we can restore order on the border. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to let Sheriff Lauterbach from Jackson County say a few words.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to the men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol. Thank you to the men and women of ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. Thank you to the Texas troopers that are here. Thank you to the Texas game wardens that are down here on the border. Thank you to all of the sheriff's deputies and law enforcement in the state of Texas that are here facing a catastrophic crisis that we have in our counties on the border and in the interior of Texas that are spreading out through the United States. Thank you again for the services y'all provide us here in this nation. The urgency of an administration to bring as many people as they can with no infrastructure in this country is unheard of. And it's un-American that we have to face such an issue here that is so preventable. I appreciate every one of y'all here today, but listen, take this message out here on something that was very preventable for us to do. We did not have to endure this kind of issue here, and let's get it stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. The head of the Customs and Border Patrol Council, Brandon Todd, come right up.
Good afternoon. I'm grateful to be here to speak on behalf of the men and women, the rank and file men and women of the United States Border Patrol. It's my honor to represent them and to be their voice. I want to talk about legal I'm sorry, this is an issue of illegal immigration, not legal immigration. We have to have an open and honest conversation if we're going to solve the problem. And that's what we want. We want to solve the problem. We understand that as long as the catch and release, what has been dubbed as the catch and release program, continues to go on, people are going to cross our borders illegally. If they know that they can cross our borders and that they're going to be released into the United States, they are going to continue to come. We have to stop that magnet. We have to remove that magnet from the pool. I had the opportunity to listen to Real Emotion today from Congressman Burgess talking about children and how inhumane it is to put these, to incentivize putting children into the hands of criminal cartels. He just talked about children walking hundreds, maybe even 1,000 miles to get to this country. That is inhumane, and that is policy driven. And we can, in fact, end those policies to ensure that we have a legal system, a legal immigration system. I'm grateful to be a citizen of the greatest country in the world. We are the most compassionate country that there is. We allow on average more immigration, legal immigration into this country than any other country. But we have to be aware of the detrimental effects of illegal immigration. And for that reason, I'm grateful that these congressmen and congresswomen came to the border to shine a spotlight on this issue that can in fact be solved, and with their help, it will be solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon, thank you, and thank you to, as Burgess said, your entire team, all the Border Patrol agents, and the great work they do. Scott Frazier is here with us today, works for the Texas Farm Bureau, and we're going to let him talk, and then Susan Kibbe, who represents the Property Rights Association, we're going to let her come up as well. So come on up, Scott and Susan.
Let me say thank you all for the opportunity to be here today and work with you guys. Thank you to all our public servants, first responders that are having to deal with this situation on a daily basis. Thank you to our members of Congress that are gathered here and others that have come down over the past few weeks to take a look at this issue. The biggest thing I probably want to share with the rest of the folks out there in the countryside is that these folks crossing right now that are being released, vast majority aren't going to stay in these neighborhoods locally along the border. They're going to spread out to virtually every city in this country. And most of our public services are stretched pretty thin right now. And a lot of these folks, coming across, most of them aren't highly skilled, highly educated, going to have not going to be brain surgeons or something in the next few days in our hospitals. Most of them are going to require social services of some kind as they spread out. They're going to test the folks and take away from folks in your neighborhoods and, test your food banks. They're going to try your hospitals, going to try your education systems, your schools. And that's all something that we just really don't need, and there's no cause to have to do this right now. I really believe that we're going to see this is going to hurt all of our social services, our social needs that we've been working on. Had people in our areas, and especially larger urban areas that have these needs, and they're going to go unmet. We're not meeting them now, and then we add a whole bunch more people that have all the same needs. It's just going to magnify that problem. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come down. I don't think this was in any way an accident. I think it was planned, and we're seeing it the plan work forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Susan, come right up.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Kibbe. I'm the Executive Director of South Texans Property Rights Association that was formed back in 2006 because of border security and immigration reform issues that affect landowners here on the border and north in the checkpoint counties. I'd like to ask President Biden and his administration to take back control of the border, take it back from criminal cartels. Let Border Patrol get back to the work that they were hired to do, catching criminal aliens that are currently traversing private property as we speak. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate the opportunity from this delegation to allow me time to speak and share the landowner experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. All right, we can take a few questions if you like. First hand up.
Hi, Congressman. Were any Democratic congressmen
We invited them. We invited the Democrats to come with us, but they chose, for whatever reason, chose not to. But it seems to be a pattern, frankly. As you know, the president has not been down, and the vice president, who President Biden, I guess, has delegated to look into this issue, has not been down either. So, no, we asked him to come.
As a follow-up, are you concerned that there seems to be this division between courts coming down from the Democrats? Are you guys going to talk? How is discrimination?
Well, as you know, the Judiciary Committee, that's why we came. Judiciary Committee has primary jurisdiction over immigration law. We thought it was important to be here. I was here 2 years ago, same area. We felt it was important to come back down again and see it firsthand, and we learned a great deal over the last couple of days. I mean, the agents, without a doubt, the agents said this has been caused by policy changes that this new administration undertook, specifically getting rid of the NPP, the Remain in Mexico policy, while people are being processed, assessed, and evaluated. That's been the cause of it. So let's hope we can work together, because this is for the good of the country, as I think every speaker who was up here talked about.
Just wanted to add, I actually just went with 7 Democrat members to El Paso. I was the only Republican who went, and I asked them to come with Republican next time. We'll make another offer, so hopefully they can join us next time, because we have to work.
Well said. Yes, sir.
As far as the plan, many of you mentioned this is an organized plan. What do you think that the end game is for this plan?
I don't know, but just step back and evaluate the situation. Right now, as we all stand here, you can't get into your capital to exercise your First Amendment liberties and petition your government. You can't get into your capital, but anybody and everybody can get into your country. I don't think that's a good policy. And we heard from the people who live it every day that is a particularly bad policy, not only for them trying to do their job, but for the people and all the turmoil and trouble and terrible things that happen to particularly kids, as Burgess talked about on this journey here. So it is just chaos, as the sheriff indicated in our meeting earlier. It has to change. The answer is pretty simple. You got to go back to the policies that were working just a few months ago. Burgess, jump in.
We're going to debate on what the end game is. Can I ask everyone out there just to think about this? These are children we're talking about that are taking this trek. It's going to be very difficult for many of them to survive. It's going to be difficult for many of them to come to this country, not knowing the language, to assimilate. We're talking about a generation of children that are at risk, my friends. So let's focus on that. How can we make sure our kids, their kids, stay in a safe environment, and then when they come here, we do it in a way that they can remain in a safe environment and grow and assimilate and be proud Americans. At this point, it's chaos, and we cannot let any party bring chaos to our nation. Let's think about our kids, and I think that's one thing we come together on and find a solution to this issue.
Is there any new information on the watch list, terrorist watch list individuals? Is there any more information?
No, the two names, the two names. I think there were Yemeni individuals. The names match names on the terrorist watch list. That's all we know. So I can't.
Is it kind of create new concerns for you? I mean, it's always been a concern, but does that kind of solidify a concern for you?
Yes, because as the agents told us, when 40% of your manpower is being spent processing individuals, that means less Border Patrol agents out there to safeguard the border and protect the border from potential terrorists. That it appears to be was the case in the folks in California.
Thank you, Congressman Jordan. I would just add, so there were, back when Secretary Mayorkas spoke before the Committee on Homeland Security on March 13, just the day before that, there were 4 names on the terrorist watch list that had been apprehended. Yep. And then these 2. And today, I understand Customs and Border Patrol has announced that they have apprehended a confirmed member of MS-13 in the San Diego sector. So this is you're going to see it not as one anecdote, but as a recurring one. And of course, the concern at all points in time is, who are we not apprehending? Right. If they, as we know, and we've heard from Border Patrol as we've been down here, that every day you see swells of people coming in to surrender to Border Patrol, and they know that at the same time, those are decoy operations because others are coming in another location. So if we've been fortunate enough to apprehend now 6, by my count, persons whose names are on the terrorist watch list, how many have we not apprehended? Particularly if that's where they're devoting their effort, those would be the high value people they want to get in.
I'm
Can you share your thoughts on Biden administration announcing they're going to consider finishing patches opens in the wall?
Let's hope it's more than consider, because we know it works. Again, that's another message we got loud and clear from the agents. They said walls work, because walls force the people who are coming to come to ports of entry where you can actually process and look at things in a legal way, in a way consistent with the rule of law. So let's hope that is not just talk yesterday or the day before when they mentioned it, that they're actually going to put that policy back in place. We can take a couple more.
Can I just add real quick on that? The administration said that they were going to temporarily suspend construction of the border wall for 60 days while they reevaluate the wall. It's been far more than 60 days. Are they now just getting around to considering it?
Well said. We'll go 1, 2, and then maybe we'll stop there.
What do you expect Congress to realistically be able to do when the executive branch is setting the policy on this?
Well, what we can do is come down here and talk about it, and talk about the real solutions, meet with the guys who are living it every day, who are, right on the front lines. We can talk about it, and we can try to persuade our Democrat colleagues in the United States Congress to exercise some common sense and go back to policies that actually work. So we'll continue to do that. Let's hope the Biden administration follows up on the announcement a couple days ago that they're considering going back to and finishing the wall and rebuilding the wall. Let's just hope. But all we can do is talk about it, and we're going to continue to do that. But the American people can speak up. Look, this is how our great system works. You talk to your member of Congress, you're a United States Senator, and you tell them, this is not what we buy. I mean, you think about it. You can't get into your capital. Anybody and everybody can get into your country. And when they come into your country, your tax dollars are used to facilitate all this that's going on. And in the case of San Diego schools, illegal migrant children are getting in-person education where kids in the San Diego school system are not. I think a lot of Americans are going to say, wait, this is not what we bargained for, particularly when we know what happens to these people on the journey, as Congressman Owens has pointed out now a couple times. Last one. No, but we were told that they started constructing the facility to rapidly move families with young children. They started that construction on January 23rd, so 3 days into the administration. So, look, everyone knows this is driven by the policies that this new administration has embraced. We gotta change those policies back to the ones that actually work. Thank you all. Sorry I had to stay out in the sun there where it's warm, but thank you all very much.
All right, that wraps up about a 35-minute press conference with Jim Jordan and others. And as you heard, there is a humanitarian crisis at the border, and they announced various reasons why that has been called that. We appreciate you watching. As always, you can go to our website and support all that we do here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, or go to rsbnetwork.com. That's rsbnetwork.com, and we appreciate all donations that you have. Plus, we want to thank our good friend Mike Lindell over at MyPillow. Right now, more than ever, cancel culture is in full effect, and there's one way that you right now, sitting at your home, sitting at your office, watching in your car at the grocery store, is to go on to mypillow.com. That's mypillow.com, and put in the promo code RSBN at checkout and shop away. Get one of those pillows, the Giza sheets, the dog bed, the slippers that we just tried on last week. But go shop away. That is one way that you can fight cancel culture and fight back this leftist attack on just really loving our country, and that's what it's all about. So go to mypillow.com and put in the promo code RSBN at checkout and get up to 66% off on your entire order. And we certainly appreciate Mike's involvement with our company as we continue to grow and cover stories that really affect friends and family across this nation as this border crisis is coming to your town. And that's one thing, if there's a takeaway in all of this, it is not that you're isolated from this crisis if you live somewhere else in the country. If you're up north or in the Midwest, this definitely will affect you at some point economically, crime statistically, education-wise with your kids in schools. So this is something that we need to address. And there was a call right then for Joe Biden and his administration to come down here and see for themselves exactly what is going on. If you missed this broadcast, go back to the very beginning. We were inside for the exclusive roundtable with Jim Jordan and others as we talked about all these topics that is on the table right now in regards to immigration reform and what they're seeing right here on the southern border of the U.S., particularly right here in South Texas. So I encourage you to go back and watch that in its entirety, and of course come up to the press conference here afterwards where we covered that as well. As always, we appreciate your support. Tomorrow I am headed off to Savannah, Georgia, to the 9 Line Apparel Factory to do another Made in America with our host Amanda Tatum. I'm happy and cannot wait to do that. So plus it gives you an opportunity to take advantage of some great savings on some very patriotic apparel. Then we're off to DC on Saturday to do a DC Revisited segment. We're going to walk around that area to see exactly what the differences are now between when we left about 3 months ago. So tune in Saturday for that. So lots of action. You can always go to our website, rsbnetwork.com, for more information. Until next time, I'll leave you with this. Goodbye. God bless from South Texas, and may God bless America. We'll see you.